Hello, listeners. If you've enjoyed these narrations, please click on that like and subscribe button. A few weeks passed after my horrible first day of work being a mailman delivering mail to supernatural creatures. I was certain I would be fired after how horrible I did on my first day. I ignored my job description and gotten my partner injured. I expected to have serious ramifications for my actions. However, nothing actually did happen. Since that day, I was assigned to the sorting room. For 8 hours in the day, I went through thousands of colored envelopes, placing the right colors in the right place. I wasn't sure what each color meant aside from the red ones needed to be sent out first. I was not allowed to touch any black envelopes I saw. Instead, I would get my supervisor to take them. I only saw 3 of them while working in the sorting room so far. I worked with some strange-looking creatures. One was a spider creature that barely had any human features. He could sort almost as fast as lightning because of his arms. He only nodded towards me when I said hello to him every day. I was a human in a workplace full of monsters. They weren't treating me as badly as I expected, though. I got a silent treatment. It was a bit unnerving whenever my supervisor looked at me as if I was a 3-course meal and he hadn't eaten for days. My supervisor was a human shaped wrapped in old bandages, similar to a mummy. His bandages were just sloppily wrapped, trying to hide whatever was underneath instead of being wrapped for preservation purposes. White light shone through where his eyes should be. His mouth was exposed, showing a mouthful of needle teeth. He drooled a little whenever I spoke to him regarding work. He was nice enough not to address that reaction. Overall, it wasn't a bad job. I was starting to think I would be in the sorting room forever though. Until one day, I got a message saying I needed to do a delivery job and to be at a location at 9 the next night. I dreaded going, honestly. I also wanted to see if I could get any information about my coworker Rufus, who had lost a leg because of my incompetence. I hadn't been able to talk to any of my coworkers in the sorting room about it. The next night, I found myself in a room looking pretty much the same as the one I entered for my first job. It looked like an empty office with a pretty receptionist sitting at a fold-out table reading a magazine. She looked like the same girl who didn't greet me the last time. She didn't even look up at me when I walked over to her table. I pulled out a few packs of gum and placed it on the table for her. That got a reaction. I actually got a smile out of her. That was all, though. She stashed away her present, going back to her reading. Knock, knock. My heart leapt into my throat. Rufus was the type of person to announce his arrival at the same time as knocking. I wanted to see him, but now that it was happening, I actually dreaded it a little. In the past few weeks, I wanted to know if he was alright. I still wasn't emotionally ready to face someone who had gotten so hurt because of my mistake. Rufus was a tank of a man, with dog ears and a cute, curved tail I hated because it did not match his tough guy image. His kind personality didn't match his image either. He came out of the door from the other side of the room, ignoring my clear, distressed emotional state. He scooped me up into a big hug. I'm convinced if I wasn't wearing the magical mailman uniform that protected me from damage, I would have been crushed. His smiling face finally put me at ease after weeks of stress. His pants legs were rolled up. The leg he had lost had been replaced with another looking very similar to a similar dog-like leg. The replacement had black fur instead of sandy brown. He had wrappings around his knee, but how slowly he walked compared to before. It seemed like Rufus wasn't fully healed up just yet. I'm really glad that you're doing alright. I've been worried I could have gotten fired because of what happened, I admitted to him. Fired? What? No. You're doing fine, Rufus said with a wide smile that made me feel only slightly better. Your leg got torn off on my first day. How am I doing fine? I said, still not being able to get over that fact. Well, yes, that isn't too great, he admitted, sounding almost guilty for a moment. Don't worry about it. This sort of thing happens. I'm fine, and unlike you humans, legs can easily be replaced. I just wanted to drop by and introduce you to your new partner for this job. If you get along, you'll be partners for a while. I don't know what to expect partner-wise. It could literally be anything. And I do mean anything. I saw a pile of mushrooms walking around the sorting room once. I was pleasantly surprised by a man looking to be around my age, and very similar to Rufus. His personality was as friendly as my previous partner. Hi-ho! My new partner came into the room with the same door that Rufus had arrived in. He walked across to me, taking my hand, shaking it in the same greeting that Rufus did. He spouted off a garble of syllables not meant for humans to pronounce as his name. Him and Rufus must be related. Max, the receptionist finally spoke. Oh, right, my human name is Max. He was at least a foot taller than me, but smaller than Rufus. His dog ears on the top of his head were fairly large compared to his head. I saw paws poking out from his rolled down pants legs. His hands had soft sandy fur covering them, claws for fingernails. When he shook my hand, I felt small pads of fingerprints, making his hands a paw-hand hybrid. And yes, he did have a curly tail too. It suited him far better than Rufus, so it actually didn't bother me. Max is my son. I suggested him for your new partner. I think you would get along, Rufus explained. Max looked like he could barely contain his excitement. Him and his father were much different for all the other creatures that I only saw for me as a meal. I think this would actually work out fine. Your job is to deliver this to the honored Slitheriths, the receptionist told us, placing a small cardboard box on the table to take. Max scooped the box up, ready to get started. This is gonna be an easy job. I heard honored Slytherins hangs out in the park of human side of things. Not dangerous at all, Max explained to me. That made me wonder something that had been rattling inside my brain for a while. As far as I could tell, mail was delivered in the teams of 2. More if the job was extra dangerous. If it was a simple job, why waste resources and send an extra person? With the last job, if Rufus went alone, I was certain he would have been fine. This sounds like an easy job today, so why even have me go along? How come we have teams of 2 for everything? I asked. Oh, simple really. Even if we think it's an easy job, we really can't predict anything that goes on in the field. Teams of 2 were far more likely to get the job done and have one worker return. You know that joke about you don't need to be faster than the thing chasing you, only faster than the person with you? Yeah. Max explained as he trailed off, looking beyond me, clearly remembering something unpleasant in his past. Anyways, let's get going. Max recovered quickly, going back to his pleasant self. We both said our goodbyes to Rufus and left the meeting room. The room we had met inside were called Zero Rooms. They could be controlled when to appear and where the entrance and exits went. We went through the door I arrived in, but it no longer was connected to the building I entered through. We walked out into a damp and dark public bathroom. The stall was the door we came out. When the door closed, it returned to being a normal stall door. I used my phone to get a look around. It wasn't clean, but not as dirty as other public park bathrooms I have seen. The door to the other side was locked. I feared we would be trapped inside until the morning and a park worker came by to let us out. Max made sure that didn't happen though. With one swift kick, the door not only bursted out from the hinges, but slammed against a tree, the metal completely twisted. I'm glad Max was friendly. I never wanted to upset him, and a low-effort kick could do that much damage. I'll sniff around trying to find a good spot to wait. I don't know what honored slithereth smells like, but supernatural creatures are different than humans. I can tell the difference with my nose," Max explained when we got out of the bathroom. He placed the box we should be delivering on his head between his ears and started to walk with large, playful steps. I was utterly mortified that he started to sing that song I had taught Rufus on the last job. He was singing it, even if the lyrics weren't correct. He paused trying to think of the next verse, and I jumped in with a question trying to distract him from singing in a dark and empty park. "How come Slithereth has the title of honored? Is he super important or something?" Max looked a little confused over my question, as if I should know the answer already. "Honored is just what we use instead of Mr. or Miss because some creatures don't have a gender. Or they have a gender that hasn't been named. It's a sign of respect. We wouldn't have a job if these creatures weren't sending mail or receiving it. Mind you, some just use whatever title they like. I've actually come across a female that go by Mr. because they like the sound of it. Same for males and the ones without genders. Didn't you read all this in the handbook?" The last part made me stop dead in my tracks. What handbook? No one ever told me about a handbook. I only received a blank swiping card to get inside the Zero Room and a pair of uniforms. You would think something this important would have been brought up before now. I never actually got one," I admitted. "What? You did a job without a handbook and lived? Humans are so impressive." Max looked so excited I didn't have the heart to tell him I didn't actually do anything on my first job but mess it up. I really needed to look into getting a handbook once we got back. "I'll send a message seeing if we can get you one. I would lend you mine, but it's not in a language you can't read. I don't think any one of us does have one in human language, so maybe that's why you didn't have one yet. The last time we accepted humans was around 500 years ago. The handbook gets outdated fast, so we can't give you one of those." Even if he did, I doubt I could read English from 500 years ago. And he said a human language. It could be written in anything. I could just go without. Max was friendly enough and he'd answer any question I had so far. It wasn't a big deal until we get into more dangerous jobs, I would assume. We walked through the park, Max leading the way. I saw a few people walking home from work, but none looked our way. I wondered if they could even see us with our uniform. Maybe it had some sort of magic that made us invisible to humans. After all, I really couldn't explain away Max having a very real set of dog ears and a tail. Max stopped at a bench under a streetlight, sniffing the air a few times before he sat down. I sat next to him looking around expecting to see anything besides, well, an empty park at night. "Do we know where the honored Slytherin is going to show up?" I asked after a few minutes of listening to Max hum next to me. "Nope." I looked over to him confused. Are we just going to sit there all night waiting? Wait, so are we really just going to sit here and wait? Is there any way to contact them saying the package is ready? I asked and Max looked like he wasn't sure he wanted to answer my question. "Well, no. We don't really have a way to call others anymore. Some creatures that have embraced human culture own these things called, phones? We can call them that way. It's sort of a long answer why creatures like us can't call each other with our own ways." "We might be here all night. I'm alright listening," I said, and Max brightened up to my answer. "There is what you humans call a spell to call each other. It had to be broken and no longer used because we accepted humans to deliver messages a while ago. It started out fine working with them, but soon they started to hate us for our nature. Some of us do kill and eat humans after all. The humans had to watch and do nothing when they saw it while working. No one is really angry at your mistake on your first day. We honestly expected it of you. Anyways, the spell was a written one. You would write the creature's name, then what action you want the spell to take. They figured out how to break down the spell and create a different one. It was used to summon and bind any creature they knew the name of. Those humans only used it for a few days, but they had enough time to slaughter thousands of us. I can understand why it happened, but not all of the ones who were born of the night harm your race. They don't even interact with anyone. They're completely harmless. However, they were killed just as well. My father and I have names starting with a letter near the end of your alphabet in our language, so that's why we lived through it. What a scary time. It was a strange feeling hearing Max tell me about humans trying mass killing his species. I really don't know what this feeling was. The image of that little girl from my first job came to mind. She had suffered and died. For what? How many humans had suffered because of these supernatural creatures? How many had been killed for no reason, aside for something they wanted to have fun? Just how many people suffered, never knowing what happened to a person they dearly loved? Max was friendly, and so was Rufus. They could have died because of what they were. They didn't deserve it, but I felt like some creatures that had been slaughtered back then should have been killed. It was such a gray area. I couldn't decide on a good answer to my feelings. I didn't want to admit to Max I thought some would be better off dead. Those creatures were just eating. It didn't matter who got hurt. I felt my phone buzz in my pocket. It was just a message from my father asking if he could borrow money next week. Max looked over at my phone, very interested. Any kind of conversation about work got derailed after that. Max didn't know much about humans. He rarely interacted with them, so what he did know was just bits and pieces he could just secondhand. I would be getting a huge bill for using so much data that night. It was well worth it though. For the rest of the night, I showed him everything I could think of on my phone. He loved videos of dogs and puppies, but lost his mind over cats. I don't think there were other persons who loved cats as much as Max did the moment he saw one. The night passed without seeing any other supernatural creatures. When the sky started to lighten, we went back to the bathroom and entered the stall where the zero room should appear. Dropping the package back off at the receptionist, we were off for the day. The next 2 nights went about the same. We got paid for sitting on the bench looking at cute cat videos. I brought snacks for us seeing if Max would like human food. He loved it. It only took 3 nights of me hanging out with him to forget the distressing truth I had learned when I took this job. I was working with a creature of the night, and those creatures killed humans. A little bit past 11 that night, that truth came crashing down around me. We were eating snacks looking up more videos when I heard screams and cries for help coming down the walkway fairly close to us. I bolted to my feet, and then froze remembering my last outing. I could not save this woman crying out for help. It went against my job. I could only deliver mail and not interfere in any supernatural affairs. I gritted my teeth listening to the cries for a few seconds when Max spoke up. "Shouldn't you be doing something?" he asked with a mouthful of jerky. "I can't save a human from a creature. It goes against my job," I admitted as my chest started to hurt. "Yes, that's right, but what goes on in a human-on-human thing? I can smell it. You can deal with it if it's 2 humans fighting," Max explained. He didn't need to tell me twice. I was so panicked and worried I did everything wrong. Max had my phone. I didn't even think about grabbing it from him, running off. In a few seconds of running towards the sounds of the attack, I saw a woman being assaulted by a man. He was pulling at her clothes, trying to tear it at her. She swatted at him, screaming for help. Judging by how she was moving, it looked like she was sprained and twisted her ankle. I didn't stop to think. I just grabbed him, yanking him off of her, hoping she could take that chance to run. The problem was, I didn't have any sort of plan beyond that. I also had never been in a fight before. In a fury, the man turned on me. To my horror, he pulled a knife from his pocket and swung it at me. I raised my arms to block it, expecting some pain. The knife snapped when it hit my sleeve. It was nice to know that the uniform not only protected me from supernatural threats, but also human weapons. Tossing the knife aside, he wasted no time. I was forced to the ground. Any punches to my chest were also blocked by the uniform. I tried getting some swings in, but I wasn't actually very strong. My attacks missed. It was simply useless in a fight. Unable to stop him, the man grabbed a fist-sized rock and slammed it against my head a few times. The weak point of my magic uniform is it can't protect where it doesn't cover. Pain flooded my head as everything went dark. I don't know how long I was out for, maybe only a few minutes, but I came to head pounding and struggling to sit up. My attacker had turned his attention to the girl again, who had failed to run away. He wrapped his arms around her waist, trying to drag her deeper into the trees along the trail. When I saw that, my mind went into a blank fury. I never thought I was a violent person, or even an angry one. I always thought I was a bit of a wimp. But something just snapped. I refused to let another person get hurt because I couldn't do a damn thing about it. My head was pounding, but my body didn't react to the pain. I just got up and threw myself at the man, prying him off the poor girl once more. I don't know where the strength came from. I got him on the ground, sat on his chest, and just let loose. I faintly remember hearing crying behind me as I just punched his face with everything my body held. My knuckles got torn and ruined from slamming into his teeth. My head ached and blood from a cut on my forehead poured over one eye, stinging it forced closed. My arms felt like they were on fire, but I didn't let it stop me. When I felt like I couldn't hit him anymore, I pressed my forearms against his neck and pressed down. I was positive I could have killed him if I didn't feel a soft touch on my shoulder snapping me from my crazed state. I felt something take me from under my arms and lift me off and to the side. What had stopped me from my attempted murder was a creature I assumed was Slithers. It was made of inky black wiggling tubes that stroned like ink. 2 orbs of flaming white light hovered where its face should be. Seeing the monster snapped me back to a reasonable state of mind. I sat on the ground, panting, completely worn to the bone. Without warning, my stomach hitched, and I puked up all the snacks I'd eaten that night. Thankfully off to the side, and not on my nice uniform. That's when I heard Max arrive. He sat next to the shocked girl I had tried to save. He tried to calm her down. She just kept crying. I don't actually blame her, though. The entire thing was a shock to any normal person. She could barely take it seeing the second squirming creature. Max left her to walk up to the monster that had stopped my assault and handed it the box. He then looked out at a sheet of paper to the monster to sign it. It just pressed the bottom, leaving a black spot as a signature. Then, to my horror, Slithers took the beaten and bloodied man into the squirming tubes of black. I heard sickening crunching sounds, and I knew that the man was dead. I thought I was used of everything I had seen. When Slither had turned and started to move towards the girl, my body found the strength to stand up, putting myself between them. There were a few tense seconds of a showdown between us before Max broke it up. "It's fine, he won't hurt her. Honored Slithers is a scavenger. They only eat the dead, or the near dead. I think they hung out here because the man you attacked was killing humans in this park, and he was just here cleaning up the mess," Max explained. I felt my stomach turn again, and I had to turn away to dry heave. I felt sick, down to my bones. If I didn't attack that man so badly, he would be alive. I was the only reason why a man was dead. If I just had him arrested, we might learn how many girls he had killed, and Slithers ate them. And now the murderer. There would be no evidence of his crimes. Families would never know what happened to those poor girls, all because I couldn't control myself. I was just as bad, if not worse, than the monster I had just judged. Through tears and dry heaving, I watched as Slithers opened the box Max delivered to him. Inside was an old My Little Ponies, one from the original show. It looked to be in good shape, the fake gems glittering dull in the dim light. None of us was expecting the toy, and none of us was expecting Slithers to go over to the poor traumatized girl, handing it to her. We did not have time to question the action. I heard voices and saw a flashlight beam. "That's the cops. It's time to book it." Max yelled and all three of us moved at once. We took off running, then had to double back to grab me because I was not as fast as he was. Slithers frantically looked around and made a mad dash off into the trees. We left that poor girl with the strangest story and a cute toy. I expected once again to be written up for my actions. I only got an eyebrow from our receptionist, then got sent on my way. Because it was a human-on-human interaction, I don't think she really cared, nor offered me any medical treatment. I received notice for another delivery job 2 days from now. I got myself cleaned up the best I could, and feared going into the doctor to get my head checked out. I didn't want them to press me to report what happened to the police, because it was clear I had been in a fight. I could just hope I didn't have a concussion. Our next delivery job sounded simple. It was a large sword wrapped in Christmas paper. It was so large I couldn't lift it, but Max easily took it, carrying it as if it weighed nothing. We sat in front of a convenience store, waiting for a creature to pick up the package. Max could tell I was feeling down, but wasn't well versed in humans enough to figure out how to cheer me up. It was the time of year when the night was chilly, but the days got hot. Sitting out front and the sun started to rise, so did the temperature. I thought I would feel hotter wearing a jacket as part of my uniform, but actually wasn't too uncomfortable in the sun. I still bought us both a popsicle from the store, a chocolate one for myself, and an orange one for Max. I sat, turning over the last job that I did over in my head. I hated the idea of victims never being found because of my action, but that would only be the case if Slithers actually ate them. I learned that the ones receiving packages could request a certain set of workers for the job. It helped keeping certain races away from others if the mail company wasn't aware of its biasm. I felt as if Slytherin saw what was happening in the park and couldn't stop it. And then they ordered something when they heard a human was working for the mail delivery. They may have hoped I saw the man attacking a girl and put a stop to it. That was just hopeful thinking on my part. Aside from Slithers giving the girl the pony toy, I had actually no proof that there was any kind or kindness in the pile of squirming shapes. Slithers was a supernatural creature, and it was in the nature to eat humans. Putting an end to a serial killer in the park would remove the food source. It was not in its best interest to have it to stop. "Max, if I wasn't there, would you have saved her?" I asked him, finally breaking out of my thoughts. "No, I wouldn't have," he answered honestly. I didn't blame him. She was not of his species, not his job, not his world, so I would assume not his problem. I had finished my popsicle and saw writing on the stick. It said I won a free one, and I didn't think they still ran that sort of promotion. Without a second thought, I started to turn and offer it to Max. I really didn't have any proof to support my theory that there was some good monsters out there. Yes, some did kill people without a second thought. Monsters lurked in the darkness of the night waiting. But there might be some kind creatures too. At the same time, Max turned towards me, popsicle stick in hand. He had also won a free treat. At the same time, we both had offered it to each other, causing us to laugh when we realized what we had done. I really do think there are some good monsters out in the darkness.